standstill agreement with Karnal state, just like India signed those standstill agreements with Hyderabad, Junagadh. And unfortunately, this is a reality that all those standstill agreements were broken by both India and Pakistan, and states were forcefully absorbed into the union. So first of all, this entire document of entire Balochistan wanted to be independent. This is completely wrong. It was the state of Karnal. State of Karnal under Jinnah Sahib
Right.
acceded to Pakistan. Hold on.
No, I don't think we have. I don't think we have time for you to have the full. Which I have one more comment about. I have one more comment about Balochistan, please. A comment or a question?
Yeah, I have to say a few things. Maran is a very good friend of mine. I just made an observation about the question whether Pakistan still has legitimacy or not. These essays refer to Khan of Kala. Now, I know that, and that is the broader problem with a lot of, those chieftains, as Irfan Hussain mentioned. Khan of Kala lives here. Khan of Kala's own sons are very much, part of the fabric of that is whatever the government system is in the Middle East. They are not actually buying the very idea that Khan of Kala is trying to sell. That is the case with a lot of Bhuttis and Bengals and others. I mean, obviously there are problems. There are Baloch, for example, within Bhuttis, some Bhuttis are in exile, but there are some Bhuttis who are very much in the government with the worries, and that the problem is confined to this. Now, Maran cannot answer what happened, why Khan of Kala's son went back to Pakistan. It is about the land, a few families, one thing, that is that. And Kyle, I'll come to you. You said something about Pakistan. Honest to God, with all due respect to you, all of it seems to be Google-based. I'm sure that you haven't been to Pakistan. And I'll tell you what, you declared, I know Henry Jackson Society, but you actually declared fatwa on Pakistan. You completely ignored the facts that surround the rise of Taliban. Okay? And Dr. Saab, I'm a Shia myself, I come from Pakistan. I have been, I've seen it all, how different various sectarian groups operate and all that. And I am part of that civil society in Pakistan that everyday challenges these very monsters which operate there, but they operate everywhere in the world.
I appreciate
and
that.
They haven't come, the problem exists. As you said, yes, I completely agree. But they haven't come just because of it is not some part of the conspiracy and part of the Pakistani establishment that we created something. There are international elements. As you said, we cannot go back too far in the history, but to my friend in Henry Jackson Society and to others, I mean, there has been,
Yes.
there is historical perspective to it. There has been American involvement, there has been British involvement.
Thank you very much. Yes. I don't. We have very little time left, and I don't want it all to be devoted to Balochistan. Important as it is, we have posed the question whether Pakistan is a victim of terrorism or perpetrator of terrorism. There are issues that affect this country, that affect Europe, that affect the whole world. Apart from Balochistan and Pakistan itself. And I wonder if we could have some questions or comments relating to that, both from the audience and from the members of the panel.
I think one observation I would make is that Pakistan has been in trouble because you've got a house burning next door when the Soviet invasion started. And we cannot take away the whole terrorism debate without understanding that the American influence in the region was manifold at that point of time. And that's where the terrorism debate had started. Americans use proxies. So what it is all about,
Are you America? Are you America? Is your economy as strong as America? For God's sake.
For God's sake, let me finish. I'm not saying anything which may offend you.
I'm not offended. I'm just surprised.
I'm just trying to present a perspective, basically. And now coming down to the future, we have repeated history. Forget the history. What Afghanistan is doing at this point of time? They are becoming a proxy for India. They are becoming a proxy for America against Pakistan. They live next door to each other. Whatever happens, you people who are there.
What have they done against Pakistan? Tell me. What have they done against Pakistan?
They have not done against Pakistan.
What?
What Pakistan has done against them?
Nothing. Pakistan is an innocent child, but what have they done?
1.1 million.
Could we
I said, what have done against them?
Could we have another? Could we have another question, please? Yes, at the back, sir.
Yes, please. He's an Afghan. Give him a chance. He's an Afghan. He wants to answer. Yes, I am a traitor, yaar. Bas khatam karo baat. You people like Christine Fair, people.
Look, you have had a chance to speak. Can you allow somebody else to speak, please?
What is this? People like you, people like Christine Fair. What is this nonsense? What are you people like you? What does that mean?
Please, can we have another question?
Next Parliament.
Yes, I am. Yes.
You've had a chance. Please, can you sit down?
I started with the assumption. I told you what I was going to talk about. So
Please. Yes, sir.
I need to let the Afghan man speak.
All right.
Can we get some order back in here, please? Yes, sure. Yes, thank you. Okay, quick point. I think quite a lot of this has been quite partial, and a lot of it has been harking back to the history and the legacy. We all understand the legacy and history. I think an interesting question is whether there has been a change in the mindset. I know the Pakistan Army a lot. I live there, and I have a lot of military friends. I think there's been a genuine change in the mindset of the Pakistan military since the attack on the school and the National Action Plan. It is a monstrously huge task to change that mindset and change the policy and execute the National Action Plan. That will take a long time, and you cannot do it all at once. You cannot go to war against the Afghan Taliban or Lashkar-e-Taiba straight away. That is a very long-term change of policy and change of mindset. And what we ought to be all doing is supporting Pakistan in that monstrously huge task of attacking extremism and not bashing Pakistan for the legacy.
Thank you. We have a comment from Afghan here, I think.
As an Afghan, I would like to answer you and your work in Afghanistan and in Pakistan. I just returned from Afghanistan just a few weeks ago. Afghanistan, the violence in Afghanistan has been on rise, so Pakistan is trying its best to fail the Afghan state. So Pakistan, if we can say, the biggest victim of war, terrorism in the world is Afghanistan, and Pakistan, ISI, is responsible for that. Yeah. We all know the Haqqani network. Haqqani lives in Pakistan. We can provide the addresses. Bin Laden was found in Pakistan. Mullah Omar was found in Pakistan. I can give you all the addresses.
Would you like to comment on that, Akhil? Yes. Would you like to comment? Can we have a comment from our speaker? No. I've asked for a comment from Akhil.
Look, I understand that international powers have been involved in Pakistan. The United States is as much guilty of propping up the Pakistan military as anyone else. The Pakistan military has become the 800-pound gorilla in the room, partly or to a large extent because it has received, successively received injections from the United States, and it's pouncing on everyone else. There isn't a dictator in Pakistan that the US hasn't been in love with. Now, setting that aside, let's also not forget that for the US involvement, Pakistan also got billions of dollars. The F-16s that you fly, that you take so much pride in and cannot live without, come from the United States. So yes, there are problems with what the US is doing. There are problems with what Pakistan is doing. Nobody's here to bash Pakistan. What I'm saying is, who is asking them to go and attack Muridke? I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about starting with building confidence in this idea that we are serious. If they are serious about tackling terrorism, let's get Hafiz Saeed to shut up. You know, when there is an Indian, I was watching Pakistani TV, Indian election was up, and who they had as an analyst on Indian election? Hafiz Saeed. For God's sake.
Christine, would you like to comment on that?
When Prime Minister Modi says that he's getting complimentary calls from different regions of Pakistan.
I'm sorry, I've asked Christine Fair to comment. Will you please sit down? This is not a parliament. I'm not
It's
shouting.
not question time.
It's
question time.
It's question time, not a speeches time. Christine.
Yeah, so actually, I mean, I really do want to take, head on and really side here with Professor Abdul Shah. against this idea that there has been this
People like us, people like you and me, right? Yeah.
for this, the onus.
Yeah.
You know, actually, I'm talking. You had a chance.
No, I was just.
So if we take a look at, for example, Lashkar-e-Taiba, which now operates under the name of Jamaat al-Dawa and also FIF, we actually find that that footprint of that organization is expanding. It's not retracting. So if you're going to argue that there's been this magnificent, we should at least see some willingness of the state to shrink the space in which that group in particular operates. If you look at the various videos, as well as on their social media, you will see that the Pakistani state provides security to Hafiz Saeed. In addition, let's talk about Zarb-e Baghwas or Zarb-e Azab, which I'm sure you prefer to call it. They undertook this operation only because the Americans were howling at them to do so and actually put $300 million in coalition support funds as the ransom. They undertook that operation only after they relocated all significant Haqqanis of any consequence to safe houses in Quram, Islamabad, and Rawalpindi. I could go on and detail the expanded footprint, not the contracted footprint, of every terrorist organization operating in and from Pakistan. So it is just not true. Moreover, I want to pick up on what Aqil Shah has said. Not only does the terrorist activities continue, the state has actually given a wider platform to these militant groups to become political entrepreneurs. When the state wanted to take a punga with India, they sent FIF with a bunch of so-called humanitarian relief goods to the border with India on Indian-administered Kashmir, and of course they weren't allowed to go in. Hafiz Saeed actually registered a case at the Lahore Supreme Court demanding that Nawaz Sharif take this issue of Kashmir to the United Nations. I could go on at length, sir. There is simply no evidence that the National Action Plan is anything but a no-action plan, and there is simply no evidence that business is as usual. And I'm going to take as a final point Afghanistan. The Pakistanis have considerable control over the Taliban, and yet, we see Afghanistan becoming ever more violent, and terrain is being ever more lost to the Taliban thanks to Pakistan. So you have a lot of evidence to bring to the party to counteract or to countervail the evidence that Aqil and I have brought to the party.
We have about 5 minutes left. I'd like to give an opportunity to each of the speakers to make a closing comment, if we may. But first of all, you have a question?
He's already had a question.
Huh?
He's already had.
Right. Well, I'll take a couple more very brief questions, please. No speeches.
My community was forced to leave their homes overnight, and it was the seventh exodus that happened in 1990, not the first. So it's not a recent phenomena of finishing off the minorities in the state. Now, interestingly enough, the people in Srinagar who left, the Muslims there, play the minority and the majority card effectively well. So when it is convenient, they're the majority. When it is convenient, they're the minority. Not worrying even one bit, even the most recent, I've just returned from Jammu and Kashmir this morning. Interestingly, the Hindus are continuing to be threatened and attacked and killed. They are being attacked even now. What happened in 1990 during the post-exodus is now being repeated yet again after the Guru Nanak, the 60-odd days of conflict that is continuing in the state, is still continuing, and guess who is suffering the most? The Hindus. Now there is not going to be even those 400 families that have remained. I would like to know why aren't the Hindu community talked about in context of Srinagar? Why is it always the plight of our other side? Which other side, my dear friend, were you talking about? Where is the other side that never gets talked about? The world has remained silent 27 years. The convenient thing is that let generations pass, their children will forget what happened to people and parents in 1990, their children will grow out of it. They will move out into another part of
Okay,
the world.
thank you.
And then there is no memory of
Thank you. You have made your point. Thank you. The back.
You have a very tough job, I understand, because it's one of the most subjective, one-sided, and journalist conversation. And I believe, as the Democratic Forum, it should have actually given more voice to those voices of dissent.
Democracy doesn't create time.
But particularly, I'm impressed with our honorable MP, who was a Brexiteer, who didn't want actually his decision to be made in Brussels, but he actually wants to make decisions by sitting in London. What happens 5,000 miles away in Pakistan? The Pakistan shouldn't build China-Pakistan economic corridor, which is totally ridiculous. Right? And I must tell him that after Brexit, in fact, even Romania wouldn't listen to you. So forget about even Pakistan listening to you. A good Australian.
Would you like to comment on that, Bob?
Well, all I can say is I've got 10,000 Romanian citizens in my constituency who listen to me on a regular basis. So I have a very, very multicultural basis. What I can say to you, I think, is very important actually in this process. It is not the UK's role to interfere in world affairs. What I give is my opinion in the UK and what the UK should be doing, lobbying within the United Nations. And what I talked about was the threat to India and to the West of state-sponsored terrorism emanating from Pakistan. And that is the key issue, whether Pakistan is a victim or the perpetrator of terrorism. There is no doubt whatsoever terrorism emanates from Pakistan.
Well, I would just like to ask anyone who has a brief question, please, or a brief comment to make. Yes.
Very brief comment. I just have to say it's very interesting to hear all the different aspects of this debate. But please, can I just make a small appeal that whoever's here, will we please make sure that we show due respect to the chair, the panel, and everybody else who's taking part, and not try and hijack a meeting, however emotionally stirred up you might be. Because if we're trying to achieve peace in the world, whether it's about Pakistan, India, Afghanistan, whoever, we won't do it unless we do it peacefully and we do it sensibly and logically.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other points? Yes, sir.
Well, I've got a comment because National Action Plan has been termed here as no action plan. But in fact, what's happening there with the National Action Plan, and I would like to draw your attention. What happened to Baba Jan and his 11 companions? They are behind bars for 40 years. Just, can you imagine that sort of situation there? And what's lands are being grabbed there in Gilgit-Baltistan. And at least on 14th of August, 3 of our workers, they have been charged under National Action Plan just for raising slogans. So, I mean, this National Action Plan is in fact against the nationalists and against those voices which are rising there for the rights of people living there. So it's not no action plan, it's
you guys are asking Pakistan to make you a part of Pakistani province, so don't say that. This is the demand from Gilgit-Baltistan.
Yes. Yes, sir. You've had a long time to say what you want to say. Any other brief questions or comments? No, sir. Yes?
As Christopher said, pointing to the end. When this is going to land? Is there any light with the light, please? When this army is going to land?
When will the...
When will the army's fight end? Christine's book title.
Ah.
When will it end?
When will the army's fight end? Christine?
When is the end?
Fighting to the end.
I have a question for Christine.
No, sir. I've had enough questions from you. No.
No, because you've had to.
I mean, look, it's not going to end, and fundamentally that's the argument. I think Akil and we have different methods of argumentation, different data, but we kind of come to the same place, and that is the army has a pretty good dig in Pakistan. As long as it has this existential enemy in a conflict that will never end, the Pakistan army can continue to justify to itself and to its people perennially intervening directly and indirectly, and also hogging, to use Akhil's metaphor, most of the budget. So I think Akhil and I, we don't disagree when he noted that, for example, Nawaz Sharif came on a platform in the 2013 election of normalizing relations with India, at least on the economic front. It was the army that undermined him. When Nawaz Sharif tried to forge peace with Vajpayee in 1999, it was the army that undermined him with Kargil. Why does the army do this? The army doesn't want peace. And I think the sooner we realize this, I think the sooner our respective countries can get on to developing a more sensible policy for a country that doesn't really want to negotiate. And actually the Pakistan army, for all intents and purposes, dictates the most pernicious policies of the region. And we can't buy our way out of this. We have to deal with Pakistan coercively, not by opening up the checkbook.
Thank you. Can I take that as a concluding comment from Christine? And I'd like a concluding comment from Akhil.
Yeah, okay. Look, I just want to read. Wants to be heard. I love democracy. I am relatively educated. What else? No.
Want to be heard. Sorry.
Never mind. He wants to be heard, so give yeah.
Want a question?
Yeah, please go ahead.
I have a comment to make for 2 to 3 minutes.
No.
No question, please.
Thank you. No, we really don't have time.
Because I think
I'm sorry.
I am Pakistan Army advisor in Pakistan Army.
Well, I should have called out. I should have called out to you with my speech, because every speech I've made in the last few years, there has been someone from the army. The last time I met a gentleman, he told me, "You have these views. You must be a Baloch or maybe a Pathan, a Pakhtun." I said, "Well," and then he told me, he said, "Sir, you better be careful while swimming in the river that there are crocodiles." So I know I don't blame you for what you do. I always wonder, though, that reporting on people from your own country who don't necessarily mean bad for their country in a light. And so what happened after that talk was op-eds were written by Lafafa journalists, as we call them, in the news, in other outlets, about me, first of all, being a Pashtun. So being a Pashtun or a Baloch, by default, puts you in the traitor category. You have to prove that you're a Pakistani. Pakistani enough. You don't have to agree with me. In any case, what I'm trying to say is, look, whatever I said today is based on my research. I am not here to bash Pakistan. Let's not equate Pakistan with its establishment or army. Pakistan is a broader entity. Pakistan has a civil society. Pakistan has 160 million other people. The national interest, which is defined by the army, is problematic, and we have to question that. By questioning the army of Pakistan, you're always branded as a traitor or CIA agent or raw agent. We need to go beyond these categorization and labeling people and engage them in a dialogue. I'm very happy to talk to anyone who's here. But just saying, you're not acknowledging America is evil, we can say all that, but we ourselves have to look deep inside and see the problems that we've created for ourselves.
Well, I'm not
That's all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm not going to try and attempt to sum up. I'm afraid that Irfan has had to leave to catch a train, and as we know, time and planes, as Christine knows, time and planes wait for no man or woman, and time has caught up with us. It just remains for me to thank you all for a very lively discussion, for coming and on a hot day and contributing to this discussion. And to thank Mr. Ajit Singh Bhamra of the Democracy Forum for arranging this, and Kyle Orton on our behalf. You could thank the Henry Jackson Society. And Mr. Blackman, thank you very much.